I guess we should maybe get around to talking about this Matrix film.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll tell you what, before that, so we actually watched, from Monday to Wednesday, we watched the first three films because Maria hadn't seen the original Matrix until we went to see it the year before last, I think, the 20th anniversary at the cinema. And I remember we spoke about that on the show, so I won't repeat my sentiments about that original film, other than, hey, it's great, it holds up, it's still just a fucking fantastic sci-fi film. I hadn't seen Reloaded and Revolutions in about 15 odd years or so. So my thoughts and memories about those films had been kind of cultivated over time through the very faint things that I remember about it, and just obviously, you know, like what you hear from what other people say about it and reviews and whatnot else. So my feelings going into them was like, hey, these films are just going to be a mess, and the second one's going to have some cool stuff, it's going to be tolerable, and the third one is just going to be just dreadful. My hot take coming out of watching these two films after a very long time is that the second film still is like, so I think that the second film is probably the better film out of the two, just because it has like better moments, but I do think that like it is just an incoherent mess from beginning to end.
Both of them are, though, to be fair.
But no, honestly, I found Revolutions to be more coherent in terms of its storyline, because it spends so much more time just in Zion and dealing with that kind of stuff that, I don't know, I felt for me that the third one actually is a little bit more coherent, and so I could actually enjoy the film because it made more sense from beginning to end.
It made more sense, but it sucked way more. That's the only...
It's probably, I do think it's an inferior film out of the two, but I found myself enjoying watching it more just because it wasn't as much of a mess. And also it has the bit where Hugo Weaving laughs after assimilating the Oracle, which is actually probably one of the best moments in the entire trilogy.
Yeah. One of the things I was really uncomfortable about with this Matrix reboot was that there was no Hugo Weaving in it. And I do think we did get a decent facsimile, but it was like,
Yeah, well, okay, shall we just like dive into Resurrections?
Yeah, let's
then?
shoot from the hip here.
All right. So I saw this film about 2 hours ago. You saw it, what, like a week, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I think it was either just before or just after Christmas.
Okay, so I'm not going to... We will avoid plot spoilers, but that's also partly because I can't explain the plot, so you ain't got anything to worry about, but I'll try and...
Can we? I feel like we can spoil, like, the first half an hour of that movie, because the first half an hour of that movie was me just going, what the fuck are they doing here?
All right, fine, sure, we'll do that. Well, where the hell do we even start with this? So, the big question obviously going in is like, okay, how the fuck do you do a fourth Matrix film considering how definitive that third film finishes, you know?
Yeah, everyone's dead.
Everyone's dead, exactly. And like the name Resurrections is not just the subtitle of the month to use. There is some real kind of literal meaning behind it, and
it's interesting that Alien Resurrections was the fourth Alien movie, and then Matrix Resurrections is the fourth Matrix movie. I'm waiting for like what the next sort of fourth movie in a series is going to be, like Iron Man Resurrections, when they bring Tony Stark back as a zombie in the MCU or something.
I was there for a second about to say Indiana Jones, because I'd forgotten that they did make a fourth Indiana Jones film.
They're making a fifth Indiana Jones movie.
I'm
right?
also aware of that. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
God damn now.
So, okay. So Keanu Reeves, he's back as Neo, and they do at least explain why he's back and how he's back. It takes a while to get to the point where they explain that, and while I do appreciate that they took the time to explain it, it's also just kind of one of those, like, here is the plot explaining why he's back, and then that's it. And I don't know, I don't think the fourth film, the crux of this film, can justify existing based on how they try to explain how these characters are back. Didn't really work for me. It wasn't really was not really fulfilling enough. It was just like, yeah, we just resurrected them. Here you are. Now we're going to do this film.
But what you've neglected to say, Mark, is that Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother, aka Neil Patrick Harris, decided that he wanted to build his own new and improved version of the Matrix, and that's why everyone's alive again.
Yes, but obviously he has to use these two core characters for reasons that are later in the film, and
because he's just obsessed.
Because energy. Because
the
energy, the power of love. It's the power of love, you know? As we were told 20, 30 odd years ago.
Yes, Huey Lewis. He gave us the news, Mark. I don't know about you, but in the first half an hour of this movie, I thought it was walking a very narrow tightrope between I'm enjoying this and this is so meta it's up its own arse to the degree where it could turn left and be in itself at the same time kind of thing.
I wasn't walking that tightrope. I was thinking that the film was walking... walking might not be the right term, but it was definitely straddling that line of... Is this film being meta in a way where it's being self-aware of how ridiculous this whole premise is?
Yeah.
Like, is it like, did Lana Wachowski just have Warner Bros. Say, you got to make a fourth film, and she went, all right, middle fingers, I'm making this fucking film, but still trying to like give some sort of respect to the original trilogy, which, by the way, a third of this fucking film is just clips and flashbacks of the first three films. And that's one of my biggest issues with this film, is just how indebted it is and how much it grabs onto those first three films and throws... And, you know, some of the way that it's filmed, like some aspects of it I'm okay with, and I think, hey, that looks pretty cool. But just like the way that a character comes into shot, and you're like, hey, I think that's the character from like the third film. I think that's the little girl from the third film. But like, instead of just allowing your brain to come to that conclusion, they literally just show you a screenshot of the footage from the third film, and it's like, you don't have to bash me over the head. I get it. Like, just give me a little bit of flexibility here, you know, because there's a couple of moments where you get certain shots, like the bit where the bullets are coming down from the helicopter in like bullet time, or it's slowed down, which harkens back to the first film. There's the bit where Agent Smith punches the column, harkens back to... But there's a lot of moments that kind of harken back to the first film. And they're fine, because even though, like, they're very on the nose, they're at least, like, my brain, you know... It's Captain America. I understood that reference, you know? At least I can deal with that, but there's so many times where like they're explaining the plot or explaining the character, and they just literally show you like an image or a video clip from the first film, and I'm just like, you don't need to bash me over the head. I get it, all right? Like, I don't know if they're just thinking that, hey, someone may have not seen those first three films and they come into this. And I mean, if you haven't seen the first three films and you come into this, that doesn't matter how much of the fucking footage, they would have to literally play the first three films for you first to get any kind of understanding of what the fuck's going on with this one, you know? My
favourite moment, though, concerning that was when Keanu Reeves, when he first meets new Morpheus, walks through a torn cinema screen showing his own face.
Yeah, I really like that bit, actually. I like the cinematography of that.
I was like, this is peak now. Like, this is ridiculous. The level... There's just so many... Like you say, it's the self-awareness of just how silly it is, like, and how self-referential it is, and how they keep dropping bits and pieces from the previous movies in there. And even, like, little things like, you know, new Morpheus's cat is called Deja Vu.
Yeah.
And you things like that, and you're just like, oh, mate.
Wait, that was not Morpheus. That was Neil Patrick Harris's.
Oh
character.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Neil Patrick Harris's Barney Stinson's cat was called Deja Vu. So it's like,
can I just say, I've watched two films, or I've been in the presence of two films in the last 3 days with
Harold
Neil
and
Patrick
Kumar
Harris.
Christmas. Did you watch that?
Harold and Kumar, the Guantanamo Bay one.
Oh my god! Literally, Harold and Kumar at Guantanamo Bay is one of the most absurd things that's ever been committed to cinema. I can't actually believe that they managed to get away with the majority of stuff in that movie. But it does feature the excellent massive banger rap song "My Dick" by Mickey Avalon.
It certainly does. I want to, because we're talking about New Morpheus there, and the two characters that I want to talk about for the moment is New Morpheus and New Agent Smith. And I put it to you, Jack. Those two characters do not need to be in this film, or they could just be two new characters. I really feel like the premise of New Morpheus, it's purely just like, hey, like, we don't have Lawrence Fishburne, but we want to have the character Morpheus. Well, he's not actually going to be the character Morpheus, so we're just going to have this person that's called Morpheus. He doesn't need to be called Morpheus, just call him anything fucking else. It would make no difference. And then Agent Smith is a version of Agent Smith, if you will, but look, I really like Jonathan Groff, I believe his name is. I really liked him as the king in Hamilton, and he voices Sven in the Frozen films. I think he's a tremendous voice actor. He's a tremendous singer, and he's all right. He has some of the charisma for like the part of Agent Smith, but I'm sorry, like, you cannot even come close to Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. There is a malevolence and a presence that Hugo Weaving brings to screen that cannot be replicated. So it's just like, he doesn't need to be Agent Smith. He could be another character, and the plot of this film gives no justification, as far as I could see, for there having to be another Agent Smith character, other than because this is the Matrix, there has to be a Morpheus character, and there has to be an Agent Smith character.
What did you think of the decision to like have all of the? I thought so. Some of the cleverer things about it. I quite like the idea that, you know, obviously if Neo is still alive, he's going to be having these kind of glitchy flashbacks to his previous, you know, his previous jaunt in the previous version of the Matrix that he was in. Having it be a video game and him be a video game designer, and that's what he's kind of channeling his own video game, I thought was a pretty cool idea. And I also, you know, I quite liked the idea of Neil Patrick Harris being his therapist, and to kind of keep him away from finding the truth, he's handing him out the sort of the Matrix blue denial pills.
Yeah, like all of that.
Actually,
that
was quite cool.
I was actually okay with like the first sort of half hour of this film, even though yes, it was very meta about literally talking about, hey, Warner Bros. Wants another Matrix film, you know, like whatever. But I did like the ideas of, hey, you know, Thomas Anderson, Neo, is like asking, hey, am I crazy? And, you know, like, am I dreaming this? Is this real? And, you know, the idea that Neil Patrick Harris's character is his therapist, who's trying to keep him from, like, you know, diving too far into that world. Like, I actually think that part of that part of the plot and the performances, because I gotta be honest, I think that Keanu is even like below the standards of what you would expect from Keanu at this point with some of his acting in this film. But there are I think he's pretty bad in this film.
He's being oblivious Keanu Reeves because he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, but I think just a lot of the times when he's just talking, I'm not buying it, and I think that's kind of why I liked the whole the sequence with Jefferson Airplane, the White Rabbit song. Like, when that's happening, I think because he's not talking, but he is doing the kind of oblivious, confused about what's going on, and that whole sequence, I did really like that. I thought that was really well shot. But I do think that just him and his acting in this film, I don't think it's that great.
Oh, no, I don't know. I love Keanu.
I love Keanu as well, don't get me wrong. I just watched all 3 fucking Matrix films, and I think he does a pretty good job in most of them for the most part.
But have you seen Bill and Ted and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey?
I have seen both of those films, yes I have.
That's peak right there. I
have seen Point Break, thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Professional surfing is tough, Mark.
I know.
You gotta understand that. I will still, my final thoughts on this movie. It's fun to talk about all the weird meta-y stuff, but the back half of this movie turns into some serious kick-ass action. There's some really awesome stuff that happens, like, without revealing too much. and again, one of my favourite bits, I suppose, that's non-action is probably Neil Patrick Harris's character slowly revealing his nefarious plan to Keanu Reeves while in like super slow motion. I thought that was a pretty cool scene, and it also reminded me of sort of Neil Patrick Harris and his thing that he used to do back on the internet back in the day called Dr. Horrible Sing-Along Blog, where he's
oh yes,
yeah.
I have to be honest, his blue glasses again, just kind of like, hey, this is symbolism. It's just a little bit on the nose, but I mean, you know, if you spot it, then sure, I guess, whatever.
You don't spot things in this movie; they hammer it into your face.
Yeah, they really do.
With a big mallet that says, "Hey, this is a reference. This is an important thing that we're doing." But yeah, that aside, as I say, the back half of this movie, there's some really amazing action sequences. There's one in particular, like in the streets with a motorbike, which is really super cool. I think they make an awesome choice with, again, no spoilers, with Neo and Trinity at the end. And I just think after the initial shock of it being crazy, meta, weird, just what are they doing, I think it turned into a pretty solid film. And I feel like there's probably another one on the way. And you know what? I'm intrigued enough by what I saw to want to go. And the only thing that I haven't mentioned, I guess, is how excited that Jada Pinkett Smith is that she can grow strawberries in Zion. And by the way, doesn't Zion look absolutely shockingly miserable?
Well, it's because it's not Zion. It's AO or IO or whatever. Actually,
it looks even more miserable than Zion, though, and they have like holding cells and stuff there.
But like, one of the things that I find interesting as well is like this new like city that the real world, the people are in. You only actually see what, like 7 or 8 people altogether, you know, throughout the entirety of this film in this real world. So it's like you don't really get a kind of sense of like this is actually a populated city. It looks completely like, well, obviously it is completely like digitally generated, but because you only see those 7 or 8 people, it doesn't feel like a real place. It doesn't feel like it just doesn't have any impact. Like as much as I hate that fucking rave scene in the third film, at least it's like, hey, there's a lot of people in this city and this feels like an actual civilization, you know?
Yeah.
I could still do without that fucking rave scene, but hey, that's the way they went for it. It was the early 2000s.
People like raves, Mark. What can
they do? Yeah, I can't say I'm particularly caring about them. I wasn't particularly caring about them doing this one, but if they just ended it with this, I'd be totally fine with that. I don't know where it sits for me in like the 4. I would probably have it either 3rd or 4th. I'm interchangeable between those first 2 films, but I can't say I particularly enjoyed this film.
Oh. I enjoyed how absurd it was. I don't think I enjoyed it in the way where I was watching it. I was like, this is a really good movie. But a lot of the choices that they made that we talked about, I found quite fun and bizarre in a way that put a smile on my face. And also, you know, just I think all of the, like I say, the back half of the movie really made it feel worthwhile to me. I think they did some awesome, cool stuff. So
I did like the character of Bugs, and I you know, if they wanted to do more stuff with her, I'd be all for that. And I really liked as well. Just, you know,
by the way, the follow the white rabbit thing in this movie is given to you by a character called fucking Bugs. Like, honestly,
yes,
it's just yet another thing where you're just like, all right, guys, we fucking get it, okay? Chill out.